Hi, and welcome. Tonight, we've got some exciting topics to talk about. This is a national topics test. So, for those of you that are tuning in from other states other than the state of Utah, which is where our school, the Institute of Real Estate Education, is located, now you're welcome to take what you can out of this. This is a multiple choice test, but the best way I think to prepare for the test, if you're short on time or if you just want to pass it the first time, would be to work with test questions. So tonight we're going to talk about 13 different test questions, and we're going to jump right into it now. Our technician expert for the night is Mr. Dan Naylor, the president and owner of our school, the Institute of Real Estate Education, and we're going to start off. Dan, let's go with the first question. So here we go. All right, you've received an earnest money payment in connection with an accepted offer. Cool. By law, and absent of any other agreement between the parties, okay, which one of these is correct? A, the money must be deposited in a trust account within 3 calendar days. B, the money must be deposited in the trust account within 3 banking days. Or C, the money must be deposited in a trust account within 3 working days. Now, or D, the money must be deposited in a trust account on the day received. Now, obviously, folks, this is a Utah law question, but if you're looking these over, the REPC contract defines what needs to be done. And the answer to this one, which if you do not, and when I say REPC, that's the real estate contract, and for our licensing that we're required to use in the real estate purchase contract, and it's defined, and the answer is B. The money must be deposited in the trust account within 3 banking days, and that was made clear. It was a minor change a few years ago because it used to just say 3 days. Well, 3 days, what does that mean? Does it mean, like recently we had a holiday, a Monday holiday? Well, would that count? Well, no, not by the new definition because it's 3 banking days. And if the banks are closed, that doesn't count. Okay. Sundays, most banks are closed, so that wouldn't count either. So on a holiday weekend, a 3 day, 4 day weekend, whatever, you'd have a little extra time to get it in the trust account. But it's 3 banking days, not calendar days, not working days. That was kind of a giveaway. And certainly not the day received. Come on, oh my gosh, I got to get to the bank for the next 10 minutes before they close. No, that's 3 banking days.
Welcome. We're so glad to see you. We want to help as many people as possible to get started in their real estate career. If you like what you see in these videos, be sure to show our instructors that you appreciate them by giving them a like. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss a single one of our topics, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Guess what? We have helped more students successfully start their real estate career than any other school that we have stats for. If you want to get in on that action, go to the description, click on the Prep My Exam link. We have audio reviews, we have thousands of practice questions, we've got an exam simulator, and we've got a little secret surprise that might be your golden ticket to starting your real estate career right. So go ahead and click the link, and we'll see you there.
Let's go to number 2, please. Don't you just love these questions? Any personal property that's included in the real estate purchase contract as part of the sale will transfer using a separate bill of sale at closing, become real property. Okay, is not obligated to be transferred. It must be included in the mortgage. So, guys, mortgage encumbers real property. We're talking about personal property. Like a lawnmower or something like that. Okay, so must be included in the mortgage? Of course not. What about C? Is not obligated to be transferred? Well, that depends on what the contract says. So just having a blanket statement like that, but you see, it says any personal property included in the real estate purchase contract. Okay, well, that's not going to, that obviously you can't look at B. This is another giveaway. I mean, just because you have a contract for something like for buying a piece of real estate is not going to change personal property into real property. Okay. So guys, the answer to this one is A. It'll be transferred using a separate bill of sale. Real estate is transferred with a document called a deed. Personal property is transferred with a document called a bill of sale. And if the escrow company in our state, if you're here in Utah, the title company that is handling this transaction should include a bill of sale. Now, sometimes they don't, if it's just something minor, but if there's a long list of personal property, they're most likely going to put up a bill of sale. Could include the lawnmower, could include the refrigerator, could include the washer and dryer. And it's kind of traditional here in Utah, just so you know. I mean, it's traditional that people take a lot of their appliances with them. They take the washer and dryer. In most cases around here, they take the refrigerator too. Back east, they leave it all. In the South, they leave it all. I mean, back east, they say, let's just go buy all new stuff for the new house. you know. So it depends on the traditions in the area, but what really defines it is, of course, the contract. And if the contract says it's included, then if it's a lengthy list of stuff, most title companies will uh, prepare a separate bill of sale so that that is transferred correctly. Number 3, please. Number 3 says prorations. Now, proration is okay. This day I own it. The next day you own it. Okay. Well, up to that point, I should be responsible for paying for things. And from that point on, since you're the new owner, you should be responsible for paying things. So in our real estate purchase contract, now, I apologize. I think earlier I said this is national topics. This is actually Utah law topics. So if you want to tune out now, that's fine. But prorations are completed based on paragraph 3.2. Closing deadline, settlement deadline, due diligence deadline, financing deadline. Now, the financing, the answer is B, the settlement deadline. The settlement is defined as when the deed is recorded, and we don't really use the word closing. We use it in our vernacular when we're talking about things, but it's defined in the contract as a settlement deadline. So, correct answer is B. Let's look at number 4, please. The agency relationship is created by what? Is it the real estate purchase contract, the contract between the buyer and the seller? No, we're not, I mean, agency is talking about the relationship between you and the seller, or you and the buyer, or you and both the seller and the buyer. And so that's not going to be defined in the REPC. It's going to be defined in a separate agreement. And so the correct answer to this one is B. Verbally, we don't, verbally is not a good thing in real estate. Statute of fraud says something in order to be enforceable needs to be in writing. And when you're talking about something like real estate and the accoutrements that go with real estate, it's got to be handshakes and verbal agreements that are different than what the written contract says, are not going to stand up, despite anyone's promises. So verbally is out of the picture, because statute of frauds. And by assumption, what, you just assume something or the other, or we use the word assumption a lot in real estate, but usually it's taking over mortgages, not assuming that this was included or not. If you really want that, you better put it in the contract. Now, if you're a big lister in real estate, like I like to be, and you go in I'll give you a specific example. One night I went to a home and there was this beautiful brass door knocker. It was a big lion's head with a big, round thing in its mouth, and that would bang, bang, bang against another brass thing. It was just gorgeous, So we're sitting there and there was a lull in the conversation, and I said, "Wow, that is a phenomenal door knocker you guys have." And the seller said, "Oh yeah, my grandfather made that in his brass foundry in England and sent it to us for our 5th wedding anniversary." Now, you think they're not going to take that with them? Of course, they're going to take that with them. They're not going to. She also said, "Oh, that's been on every house we own." So I said, "Well, folks, let's get a screwdriver and take it off tonight." Now, you could put in the listing information, do not think about even including the door knocker. It's specifically excluded from the sale. But folks, let's talk real life. A lot of times you have people in the car, you're driving through a neighborhood, they see a directional sign. Oh, well, let's drive over to that one. Well, I wasn't on the tour that I had settled, but anyway, you drive around the corner, they see the property, they fall in love with it, they say, man, I want to see that right now. You call the other agent and says, sure, we can get you in probably the next 15, 20 minutes. Um, so what creates the bond between the buyer and the seller, or the buyer? That's the REPC contract. That's but what creates the agency agreement between the agents and the people they're representing, whether it's both of them at the same time or whether it's one or the other? It's a listing contract on the buyer side, and it's a buyer's listing on the other side. So if you sometimes they call it a buyer's contract, but it's a separate agreement. Okay, and you have to have all of this done, or you're not going to be with your broker very long because you're going to get everyone in trouble. Okay. Number 5, please. According to the contract, after closing, the buyer owns the home. But what happens to any rental agreements that are on the property? A rental agreement on the property would mean there was a tenant there. Maybe that's why they bought the property. Maybe it was a 25-unit building. I mean, don't think small. I mean, think big. Or a 125-unit building. Of course, the new buyer wants the tenants to remain. Okay. So they wouldn't automatically terminate. That was agreement that predated that sale between the buyer and the seller. So, that's not going to happen. Okay. They terminated at the buyer's option. See, they remain in effect. You see, the thing that, and that is correct answer, by the way, but the reason why it predates the sales agreement, and maybe that's the whole reason the buyer bought the property in the first place. Because it had a high occupancy, and you don't want, and it will remain in effect because you don't want the tenants to move out. Now I'm talking about residential tenants, but let's talk commercial property. You're buying the building because it has, 16 excellent commercial tenants in it. Do you want them to pack up and leave and totally destroy your cash flow for that multi-million dollar building? No. And so when a buyer is looking into buying something complicated like that, they're probably going to get their lawyers involved and examine all the leases as well, so that they get an idea of what will happen to the income stream after the closing. They follow the seller of the next property. Okay. Well, that was a giveaway. Let's go to number 6, please. You can do this, guys. It's just a multiple choice test. And usually you can eliminate one or two answers that are just garbage, and then that gives you a much better chance. If you can eliminate two, you got a 50-50 chance on a test where you only need about a 70% anyway, right? A little bit above or so. 6, who is responsible for any capital improvements on a property prior to the settlement? Well, prior to the settlement, who owns it? Prior to the settlement, it's still whose property? It's the seller's property. And that's the correct answer. It's not the buyer. The buyer has he has a right to buy it, but it's still not his or hers. Or maybe the buyer's an entity. It's not theirs. And it won't be theirs, his or hers, until it actually closes. Okay. So who would be responsible for capital improvements? What if something broke? What if there was a real problem with the property prior to the closing? Well, then you may have to even extend the closing date, or you may still be able to make that closing date. But if you can make the closing date and it can be repaired to everyone's satisfaction, these are things that are all covered in our 8-page buy-sell agreement, which we call the real estate purchase contract. But it's not the buyer and the seller. This is prior to the what? Prior to the transfer of ownership. The contract does not specify. Well, it most certainly does specify. Okay. So let's look at number 7, please. Number 7, the buyer received the seller's disclosures. Okay, cool. In that disclosure, they found out that the seller had replaced several of the main water lines throughout the house themselves. So the buyer says, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm satisfied with the seller performing those types of repairs. I mean, they're not a licensed plumber. Maybe it wasn't that complicated, but I would much prefer that a licensed professional had done that. Okay, so the buyer received the seller's disclosure. The disclosure, they found out that the seller had replaced some things, and I don't know if they're just not comfortable with that. So, A, the purchase contract requires the seller to hire someone to redo the repairs. That's not covered in a purchase contract. Don't you dare walk into that exam without reading that 8-page agreement several different times, okay? So that, you're familiar with what's in there and what's not in there. What about B? The buyer has no recourse and are already under contract to purchase the home. Okay. Well, they most certainly do have some look-see provisions where they have their buyer due diligence period where they could cancel it. And so C, the buyer can cancel a contract if they're not satisfied with the information provided in the seller disclosures, as long as they're canceling it before their deadline. Okay, that is the correct answer, by the way. Okay, look at D. The seller cannot sign another purchase contract for at least 2 years. Obviously, garbage. Hey, the seller could find this could be under contract and you're waiting to close, and another buyer comes along and says, "Oh man, I love this house. Wish I was here and that I was in first position." But hey, can I write a backup offer? And if the first deal cancels, then I'm already in place. And that would be what we're looking here. The buyer cannot cancel the contract if they're not satisfied. But what if they do? If they do cancel the contract prior to their due diligence deadline, well, they can and they can walk away. Well, then you're already in position. So having a backup is not a bad idea. Seller cannot sign another purchase agreement for 2 years. That's just, of course, they can sign, but it's subject to that first agreement. Okay. Number 8, please. After the walkthrough inspection, what is true? Okay. The buyer can require additional repairs. Require. The seller is no longer liable for the condition. Yeah, let's just let it go to hell. No. Well, I quit watering the lawn because it was too expensive and it's all dead. No. C, the buyer will be required to write up a property condition. Why would the buyer, who probably is not a contractor, or they might be, but I mean, what if they're a physician or something? I mean, they don't know much about what's good wiring and what's bad wiring. That's why you're hiring an inspector. Well, the correct answer is D. The same contract terms remain in effect. Okay. After the walkthrough inspection, you're still governed by. I got D here. That's not the right highlight, Dan.
Yeah, it looks like the highlight's off. I'll have to fix that.
Okay, but the answer is D, guys. Okay, the same contract terms remain in effect, and part of those terms is that if they're unhappy with the condition, they can't require the buyer excuse me, the seller to fix it. But the buyer can say, "Look, if you don't fix it, I'm out of the deal." Or maybe we'll compromise by the price a little bit. Okay, let's look at number 9. Common sense, common sense, but it takes familiarity with the real estate purchase contract. And I had a lady that called me in tears. Oh, I flunked the exam. And I says, well, what was the problem? Well, I never had time to read the real estate purchase contract. There were a ton of questions about it. Of course, there will be, and it'll be on the Utah portion of the test, of course. Now, some states actually blend it all together, but most states have a national portion and a state portion. Number 9, liquidated damages. Liquidated damages means what? A, the damages are converted to a dollar amount. Okay, that sounds real warm and fuzzy, probably because it's the right answer, of course. The damages go to mediation. The damages go to court. The damages are held in escrow. Okay. Liquidated damages means that we said, well, uh, we have a whole paragraph in the REPC that covers, well, what if the seller defaults? The seller defaults. Well, I changed my mind. I don't want to sell it. Well, you can get out of the deal by paying whatever the earnest money was that the buyer put up, an equal amount to that, and it's called liquidated damages. Okay, so we define liquidated damages in the REPC as the amount of the earnest money. But there could be there could be addendums and whatnot. There could be a number of things there. But the correct answer to number 9 is A. The damages are converted to a dollar amount, which, according to the definition in the real estate purchase contract, is the amount of earnest money. Okay. So one good reason to have bigger earnest monies, because if there is a default by the buyer, then they're going to have to pay. Number 10. According to the real estate purchase contract is called the REPC, like I've been using tonight. What happens if the seller defaults? Okay, let's look at A. They must pay an amount equal to the earnest money and liquidated damages to the buyer. We've already really kind of covered that. And if that's feeling warm and fuzzy to you, that's good because that's the right answer. B, they must pay an amount equal to the half the earnest money. C, they must pay an amount equal to double the earnest money. Or D, the contract is canceled with no recourse. Well, our Rep C, because you've read it a few times before you walk into that test, you would know that the answer is A. It's equal to the earnest money. And it's defined. The liquidated damages is defined in the contract. Number 11, please. Agent F received an offer for their client's property that expires on Thursday. On Friday, their client wants to accept the offer. Well, the offer's already what, guys? It's expired. Okay. Well, what can Agent F do? Well, I mean, how about A? Have the client sign the agreement anyway, call the other agency if that's okay. No. How about B? Have the client meet with the buyer to sign the offer. C, meet with the other agent and then sign the offer. How about D? Yeah, ask the other agent for a new offer since the original offer has expired. Okay. That would be the correct procedure there. Okay. The offer expired. It was dead. They should have accepted during a period of time. The buyer doesn't have to make a new offer. They don't, but they may still want the house. So, the other thing that might be smart is to call the listing agent if you're working with a buyer and say, well, is the seller available? I mean, the seller might be incommunicado. They might be on a Lake Powell houseboat and maybe they don't have cell service. You can't get a hold of them or they're just, so, well, yeah, we're going to need a little extra time. Well, then why don't we just, why don't I amend the offer and send you a new one so we keep this deal clean. The correct answer to number 11 is D, folks. D is in David. Ask the other agent for a new offer since the original offer has expired. This one actually was dead. It expired. We need another offer. Okay. Keep your paperwork straight and always watch your deadlines. And, it'll save a lot of heartache. Number 12, please. Okay. Number 12 says which of the following uses is not a legal use of the state approved real estate purchase contract? Well, it's not a use, a legal use. How about A, to submit a counteroffer? Well, yeah, it talks. There's even a blanket check when you're submitting a counteroffer. It's part of the Rep C. How about altering the language in your real estate contract? Well, you can do that to some extent, but you can't like line it out. You've got to write it on an addendum if you're going to extend something or change something. Number C, add terms and conditions to the offer. Well, that's called a counterproposal. Okay, and so that'd be a little bit different. Uh, and number 12, and you see, we're looking at the last one is create a commission obligation for the buyer, for the seller. Okay, out of these, what do you guess, guys? Survey says hit the button, Dan. Add terms and conditions to the offer. That's what we use addendums for. Okay, but is it not a legal use? State approved real estate purchase contract? Well, guys, that's what it's all about. Let's look at number 13, please. And we need to look at that one a little closer, Dan. 13, a sales agent has written an offer. Buyer and seller agree to change the closing date. So how are we going to change something in the offer? Okay. How about A, change the actual contract and have both parties initial? Kind of sloppy there. Modify the contract by completing an addendum. That would be preferable because it's very clear on what you're modifying. Scratching something out on the other contract, it's just not as clear. It's full and complete signatures are what are needed on the addendum, and that just makes things a lot more unquestionable. Okay, and what about D? To complete a change of date form. There is no change of date form. It's it's, you know, it's an addendum form and it's used for a lot of different uh, uh, purposes, which would be changing dates. But the correct answer to this one is modify the contract by completing the state approved contract addendum. Well, appreciate you being with us tonight, folks. That's our short little quiz. We have a number of these videos. You can find them on the internet. You can also find them by going to the Institute of Real Estate Education, and there's links there you can just click on, and it'll take you right there. This was a state law type thing, so if you're taking your tests in Texas or Colorado or one of those places, uh, it's interesting, but it won't be specific to your exam. Now, we appreciate you being with us tonight, and we have a number of these videos that will be very helpful to you on even if you're in another state. At least on the national portion, tonight was much more particular to Utah state law. Appreciate you being with us tonight. I'm Rick Roller. It's been my pleasure to be with you. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to call. You can call us at the school, or you can use my personal cell phone number, 801 556 8000. That's 556 8000. Operators are standing by. Thank you. See you next time.
Thanks for joining us today. You are taking the right steps to get started on your real estate career, and we're proud of you. If you want to make sure you don't miss a single one of our videos, go ahead and subscribe to our channel right now. And if you want to show our instructors that you appreciate them, give them a virtual high five. Click that like button. If you want to join us for our Prep My Exam reviews that include all the tools you'll need to get started in real estate on the right foot, go ahead and click the link in the description, and we'll see you there.